Pull up a map of southern Louisiana, the kind that hangs on a classroom wall, and most of the green land you are looking at is a lie. It reaches down toward the Gulf of Mexico laced with blue threads of water, solid and certain, the way a place is supposed to be. It is not solid at all. A great deal of what the map calls dry land is open water now, and has been for years. The people who draw the real charts, the ones that ships actually steer by, have quietly gone through and rubbed out more than 30 names. Bays and passes and points that used to be somewhere. They took the names off because there was nothing left down there to carry them but water, and they cannot keep up. The people who correct those charts are always working behind the truth, because the coast moves faster than the paper does. A map of this place is a photograph of something that is already half gone by the time it prints. Buy the newest chart of the lower Louisiana coast tomorrow, and it will already be wrong, still showing you marsh grass standing in spots where there is nothing left now but the reflection of the sky. Since the 1930s, this coast has lost more than 2,000 square miles of itself. Picture the whole state of Delaware. That much Louisiana, gone, turned to open gulf inside a single lifetime. In the time it takes you to watch this, out at the edges, another field of it will slip under, and nobody will be standing there to see it go. And it is not leaving quietly, and it is not leaving empty. Because when the bayou takes a piece of Louisiana back, the first thing it reaches for is the dead. That is the thing the Louisiana Bayou is hiding. Forget the monsters and the ghosts the swamp tour guides sell you after dark. What is actually happening out here is slower than any of that, and a good deal worse. There are two things worth knowing about this water. The first is what it has already swallowed down here. The second is quieter, and it is the reason the first one keeps happening. The bayou is not simply sinking on its own. It was helped. The water is taking it back. Hold on to that, because you are going to watch it happen. Start with the graves, because in this country the graves go first. Down here, they do not bury their dead in the ground the way most of the country does. The ground is too wet. Dig down a few feet in the marsh, and the hole fills with water before the coffin ever reaches it. So along this coast, people lay their dead in tombs above the ground, in little whitewashed vaults, or they raise the cemetery up on the highest patch of solid earth they can find and trust it to stay. For a long time, that trust held. It is not holding anymore. At Leeville, down Bayou Lafourche toward the Gulf, there was an old cemetery where families had been laying their dead to rest for generations. Today, you cannot visit it, because it is gone. Not overgrown, not abandoned, underwater. The whole burial ground has slipped beneath the bayou, and the people in it are somewhere down in the dark current, under a surface that looks like nothing at all. Farther south, in Plaquemines Parish, there is a cemetery a man could still mow the grass around in the 1990s. Now it goes under with every high tide. Twice a day the Gulf comes in and covers the dead, and twice a day it pulls back out, and the stones sit there dripping. And when the storms come, the water does not just cover the dead, it sends them back. After Hurricane Ida came through in 2021, the people of Jean Lafitte, a small bayou town just south of New Orleans, walked out into their flooded streets and found the caskets had come up out of the earth. In the roads, in the bayou, caught in the brush. One vault broke open and a body wrapped in plastic hung out of it, and it stayed like that for months, because no one knew whose it was or where it belonged. After another storm a little to the west, a casket floated nearly 3 miles from the cemetery it started in, and duck hunters found it out in the marsh, a faded blue box streaked with rust, resting in the reeds like it had grown there. There is a man in Cameron Parish who has spent 18 years recovering coffins that the water carried off. He has pulled back close to 1,000 of them. He figures that is about 7 in every 10 that went missing. The other 3 are still out there. It has gotten bad enough that some families no longer wait for the storm. They go out ahead of the water and dig their own people up, grandparents and children both, and carry them inland to higher ground in Homa or farther, to bury them a second time somewhere the Gulf cannot reach yet. Others cannot afford to move anyone, so they simply keep tending a grave they know is losing. There is a woman down in one of these sinking cemeteries who still comes every year to her family's plot, and she brings flowers, and a bag for the trash, and a shovel, not to dig, but to kill the snakes that have moved into the tombs where her people are. That is what visiting the dead looks like down here now. Think about what that means for a moment. You bury your mother on the highest ground your family owns, and you do everything right. and the coast keeps eroding at the edges, 30 feet a year in the worst of it, and one autumn, a storm reaches in and takes her, and you spend the rest of your life not knowing which stretch of open water she is under. And there is nothing supernatural about any of it. It is just an ordinary bad season down here, the kind that comes for somebody's family every time the wind blows hard enough. The water is taking it back, and it starts with the ones who cannot run. If you are the kind of person who wants the true stories the water down here has kept, the ones the postcards leave out, a quiet subscribe keeps them coming. There is more drowned country in the American South than anyone has counted, and we are only getting started. Now, if you want to know where all of this is going, you can look at where it has already been. Because the bayou has swallowed whole towns before, and it did it inside living memory, and almost no one outside Louisiana remembers their names. Ride up Interstate 55 north of New Orleans, and for more than 20 miles, you are not driving on land at all. You are on a bridge, one of the longest in the whole country, carried on concrete pilings across an open swamp called Manchac. Green water on both sides, dead cypress standing in it like fence posts, and nothing that looks like it was ever a town. But it was. 2 of them, at least. On the strip of higher ground out there, before the water rose, there were settlements. One was called Frenier, a little farming place, first settled back in 1836. The other, a few miles up the rail line, was called Ruddock. Ruddock was a real town, a cypress lumber town, 700 people by 1910, with a sawmill and a railroad station and a post office and a boarding house and a saloon. People were born there and married there and expected to die there of old age. On the 29th of September, 1915, a hurricane came up out of the Gulf, a Category 4 storm with winds near 145 miles an hour, and it walked straight over these swamp towns in the dark. There was no warning worth the name back then. The storm tore the railroad station apart, and the people inside it were left with nothing to hold, and the water came up through the swamp and took them. Ruddock lost 58 of its people that night. The town was never rebuilt. The survivors walked away from it, and the swamp closed over what was left, and today you cross it at 70 miles an hour and never know your tires are rolling over a graveyard of a town. There was a woman out there too, in Frenier, and her name has outlived the town, Julia Brown. The legends have made her into a swamp witch, a woman who sat on her porch and sang that when she died, she would take the whole place with her, and who was being buried on the very day the storm came in, as if she had called it. That is the story the tour boats sell. The truth is quieter and, to my mind, sadder. Julia Brown was a real woman, a black landowner who had come to own 40 acres out in that swamp, a healer that people walked miles to see, known for the songs she sang on her own porch in the evening. She died an old woman, of nothing but age, in the autumn of 1915. And it is true, as far as the records go, that they were burying her the day the hurricane arrived, and that in the chaos of the storm her coffin was lost and never found. The living turned that into a curse, because a curse is easier to carry than the truth. The truth is that the water took her twice, first her life, and then her grave, the same as it is taking the rest of them now. And Ruddock was not even the first town this coast lost. 22 years before that storm, in October of 1893, another hurricane came ashore farther south and fell on a thriving fishing village called Cheniere Caminada, out near Grand Isle. In a single night, the storm and the surge killed around 2,000 people, close to half of everyone living there, and scoured the village off the map so completely that it is remembered today as the deadliest storm in Louisiana history. The people who survived it rebuilt somewhere safer, farther in. That has been the pattern here for longer than anyone has been keeping count. A storm takes a town, the survivors move farther inland, and given enough time, the water reaches the new place too. The water is taking it back, and it has been for longer than anyone driving that bridge remembers. So how does it happen? How does a coast the size of a small country come apart in 100 years? And here is the part almost nobody down here wants to say out loud, because this part is our own doing. A healthy delta is a machine for building land. The Mississippi River, left alone, carries an enormous load of mud and sand down out of the middle of the continent, and every spring it would jump its banks and spread that mud across the marsh, laying down a fresh, thin skin of Louisiana year after year, faster than the Gulf could take it. That is how all of this got built in the first place. Then we went to work on the river. To keep the Mississippi from flooding the towns and the farms, engineers walled it in, Mile after mile of levee, a wall on each side holding the river in a straight, fast channel and running it out past the marsh into deep Gulf water, where all that land-building mud drops away and is wasted. The marsh stopped being fed, and there is less mud in the river to give now anyway. Since the 1800s, the dams built upstream have cut the load of sediment in the lower Mississippi by more than 70%. We put the delta on a starvation diet and then wondered why it began to waste away. But the levees only starved it. Something else cut it open. Beginning about a century ago, the oil and gas companies came into these wetlands, and to move their rigs and their pipelines through the marsh, they dredged canals. Thousands of miles of them. Straight ditches carved through soft ground that had never known a straight line. Every one of those canals was a door. Salt water from the Gulf ran up them into the fresh interior marsh, and salt kills the grasses that hold the mud together, and once the grass dies, the ground it was holding simply dissolves into the water. Every canal they dug threw up a long bank of dredged mud along its side, and those banks blocked the natural drainage, drowning the marsh behind them from the other direction. You can still see it from the air, the whole coast scored with straight lines in a place that never had a straight line in it. A grid cut into a living thing. The great cypress that once shaded this water stand dead and gray now where the salt reached them, whole forests of bare trunks in the open Gulf. The canals widened. They ran together. The marsh that had taken the river 6,000 years to build came apart in a few decades, and the ground kept sinking on its own besides, the way old delta mud always settles once the river stops adding to it. Starved from above, cut open from within, pressed down from below, and the warming Gulf rising up to meet all of it. A football field of Louisiana turning to open water somewhere between every hour and every 100 minutes, day and night, for decades. That is the second thing the bayou is hiding. The coast is not only vanishing on its own, it was helped along by the levee and the dredge, and the bill for it is being paid by the people who live the farthest out, closest to the water, who never made a dollar off any of it. Which brings us to the town that is going under right now, while you watch. About 80 miles southwest of New Orleans, down at the end of a narrow road that floods when the wind blows wrong, there is a ridge of land in the marsh called Isle de Jean Charles. For generations, it was home to a community of the Biloxi Chitimacha Choctaw, native families who had been pushed down onto that island in the first place, back in the removal years of the 1830s, when it was the kind of place nobody else wanted. They made a whole world out there. Trapping, fishing, gardens, a church, a cemetery, houses strung along a single oak-lined ridge. For most of its life, the only way in was by boat. Then came one narrow road called Island Road, a low ribbon of asphalt laid straight across the open marsh. And to this day, that road floods and disappears under the tide whenever the wind blows hard out of the south, cutting the whole island off from the rest of the state for hours at a stretch. It is the only cord left tying that community to solid ground, and the Gulf keeps cutting at it. Since 1955, that island has lost 98% of its land. Not half of it. Nearly all of it. A place that was once miles across is down to a strip about a quarter mile wide, and the Gulf is still coming. The gardens went salt and died. The oak trees stand bare and gray in the water, the same oaks that once shaded the whole ridge. Drive out to what is left of the island now, and it feels like driving straight into the Gulf. Open water on both sides the whole way, a handful of houses up on tall stilts, and the wide empty sky sitting on top of all of it. The cemetery, where their people had been laid for generations, is going under with the rest. At its height, about 300 families lived on that ridge. Toward the end, there were around 26 left. In 2016, the state of Louisiana was granted $48 million from the federal government to do something no American community had ever officially been paid to do before. To give up an inhabited place for good and move an entire people inland to 515 acres of old farmland up in Terrebonne Parish, well back from the water, and start their town over on solid ground. They named the new place the New Isle. And even that did not go smoothly. Some of the families would not go, would not trade the island their grandparents were pushed onto for a subdivision an hour away, and chose to stay out there on the last quarter mile and let the water come. The newspapers called them the first American climate refugees. Strip the politics off the phrase, and what is left is plain and old as the coast itself. These are people being run off their land by water, the same as the 58 at Ruddock, only slow enough this time that we can watch every foot of it go. And Isle de Jean Charles is only the first of a long line. Behind it, down every one of these bayous, sit the little towns at the end of the road, Leeville and Grand Isle and a dozen others, watching the same water rise at the same edges, doing the same math. One parish alone, Plaquemines, down at the very mouth of the Mississippi, is expected to lose more than half of the land it still has inside the next 50 years. Half of a whole parish in the lifetime of a child born there today. So come back to that map on the classroom wall, the one with all the green. That is the thing the bayou is hiding, right there in plain sight, painted over in a color that means solid ground. The land is not solid. A good part of it is already gone, and the graves are floating, and the towns are being carried inland one grant at a time, and the whole coast is quietly turning into the same open swamp that closed over Ruddock in a single night in 1915. People come down here looking to be scared. They ride the boats at dusk, hoping for a ghost in the trees, a witch on a porch, a monster under the black water. They are looking for the wrong thing. The bayou is not haunted by anything. The bayou is becoming the ghost. It is disappearing in front of us, taking its dead and its towns and its names down with it. And the strangest part is how quiet it is. How little any of us say about a whole American coast slipping under the water in plain daylight. If you want to keep sitting with the true stories this water is holding, the drowned towns and the vanishing ground all across the South, subscribe and stay with me. Most of these have never been told plainly, and the water is not going to wait. They said the swamp took Julia Brown because she cursed it. It did not. It took her because that is what this water does, and it has never stopped, and it does not need a reason. The names come off the map. The stones go under the tide. The road gets shorter every year. The water is taking it back.